before I get into the content, let me say that Emerald is really a great publisher. It looks like your organization, Cladea, has a relationship with Emerald in terms of one of the journals, and Chloe, who's the publisher of several different journals at Emerald, including mine, is wonderful to work with. And I've worked with Emerald for a long time, and I'm a big fan. I think they do everything right, and they're also quite innovative and take advantage of opportunities, but they're a fantastic academic publisher. So it's great to work with them, and it's great to be here with all of you. So I have these short points on the screen that we've put together to show you. I'll talk through each one of them, but before I do, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience as an editor. I edited Management Decision, as Chloe mentioned, which is one of the larger journals that Emerald publishes for, gosh, around 6 years. And I probably made, I don't know, thousands of decisions. In fact, I have a Google document where I'm not doing it as much anymore, but I used to share all of my memos to the authors, and I would just copy paste it into this Google document that I held privately. And when I finished editing at Management Decision, that document was 900 pages long. So I wrote 900 pages of memos to authors, and it just adds up. It's a lot of work being an editor. I guess that's my point. And if you enjoy that work, that's great. You get to make strategic decisions about the research that the journal will publish. You can watch the articles that you accept go on to make an impact on the field. You get a lot of random emails from authors. You get to work with an editorial board. You get to watch the exchanges between reviewers and authors, and it's very interesting. It's probably one of the purest, if not most important, phenomena that happen in the academic world, as Chloe mentioned earlier in her introduction. After I departed Management Decision, the reason I stepped down from that editorial role was because I had moved universities. I had been recruited to become an endowed chair at my current university and build a brand new program, which was going to be a lot of work. And so I resigned, and I helped onboard and train my replacement, my successor, who's doing a fantastic job, about 3 years ago. And then after I was here for a while at the University of Alabama at Birmingham building a program, Chloe and myself and one of Chloe's colleagues had a conversation about the particular journal, the Journal of Small Business and Enterprise Development that I edit now. This is a very high potential journal. It needed a restructuring. It needed an overhaul of the operational process, which I came in and I did, and I'll talk about our structure a little bit here as I make my remarks. And I was very excited because entrepreneurship is a very hot area in the domain of business studies. There's a lot of increasing attention in the research world. This is a field that has yet to be defined. There's a lot of great discoveries to be made, and to be able to lead one of the outlets that is at the forefront of that development it's always going to be attractive to a scholar or a professor, and especially one who loves to be an editor. Sorry, excuse me. And so, yes, it's been great. I've been in this role for about 7 months now, but as I say, I edited a journal for 6 years before. I think Management Decision received well over 2,000 articles submissions per year. At JSBED, I don't have the most recent numbers, but we're probably around 800, 900, something, in that ballpark, in that neighborhood. And I believe we're growing. And we have a really great process, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But let me go through these bullet points first, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we put it all into context at the end. And then if you have questions, we welcome that. I'll try to take about 15 or 20 minutes here to go through this. And if I need to stop, please interrupt me and let me know. First, so this is how to be a great reviewer. And I put these together out of my experience watching a lot of reviewers. Be critical and descriptive, not prescriptive. So critical means it's really your job to try to poke holes in the research that's being submitted. And that doesn't mean you're poking holes in the researcher who submitted the paper. It means you're poking holes in the work that researcher did. I'll talk about being constructive here in a moment, but it's really important to angle your critical remarks toward the work, not toward the people. And I don't know, maybe it sounds a little bit foolish even saying that right now, but you would be surprised. Some of the exchanges that I've seen between reviewers and authors can get pretty nasty. And it's kind of funny the way that happens sometimes. But it's really your job as an editor, or if you have associate editors, which I do. I have 6 of them. And we also have 2 senior associate editors. Part of the job of that editorial team is to shepherd this process and protect the dignity, because you don't want authors to be upset because they were insulted after submitting to your journal. And it's really, if you get a reviewer who does that, you can kind of tell them you shouldn't act that way, but really it's down to the editor. It's your responsibility to shepherd and address these kinds of things that happen. So be critical toward the work as a reviewer. It's very helpful to the editor when you do that. And then the second part of that statement says, be descriptive, not prescriptive. So this gets into the structure of a decision, of an editorial decision that needs to be made about any particular submitted paper. Reviewers are going to disagree with one another. So if you imagine that a paper has 2 or 3 reviewers commenting critically on it, they're going to have each one of them is probably going to have different criticisms about what they think is right, what they think is wrong, and so forth. As a reviewer, don't worry about what the other reviewers might or might not be saying. Just focus on what you know, play to your own strengths, describe what you see in the article as good or not so good as you be critical about it, and just describe the quality of the work in this way. That's being descriptive. Prescriptive is when the the reviewer starts telling the author or even the editor what ought to be done. This is what needs to be done. This is what you should do, and even trying to drive the editorial decision. I can tell you this becomes important because as an editor, you will receive, maybe if you get 3 reviews, one of them might say reject, one of them might say accept, one of them might say revision. So you have to make a decision about what to do. Many reviewing platforms have the reviewer indicate through a click button what ought to be done with the paper, reject, revise, or accept. But one must understand that the editor has to take different reviews from different reviewers and make one decision, not 3 different decisions. So as a reviewer, all that to say, it's helpful if you don't try to drive the decision. Just describe the quality of the work. Be critical as you do it, and focus your comments on the work, not on the person or their motivations. And then when the editors and the associate editors receive those reviews, it makes it a lot easier for us to make good, defensible, sound decisions. Because what we have to do is we have to read the paper, we have to read all the reviews. We may have our own critical feedback for the author, but invariably we're going to agree more with one reviewer than we do with other reviewers, and we have to make one cohesive, holistic decision. So the way that the reviewers can support that is to be critical, descriptive, and not prescriptive. Being constructive is important. There's a couple of different reasons for that. One, it's good to be kind and supportive to other human beings. We like that kind of energy when we receive that from others. So that's just a good thing to do no matter where you are. And being constructive is good for that. I think it's important in civilized society to be constructive toward other people and what they're trying to do, for sure. But in the context of a journal operation, being constructive has an additional purpose, which, let me put it this way. Most journals, especially good journals or busy journals that receive a lot of submissions, they reject a lot of papers. And all of those papers, most of them, let's say, are going to be submitted to other journals as the author tries to publish them. So even if an article is rejected, the reviews ought to be used by the author as they try to publish the paper elsewhere. And if those reviews are constructive, it is better for that purpose, to help out the author. And it's a great way for a journal to make what we might call impact, or at least another kind of impact, because you're helping the overall scholarly enterprise if you're providing reviews that help these authors publish the paper, no matter where it may end up being published. And so being constructive is almost like a social responsibility in the world of academic publishing. Communicating directly with the AE or the editors. So this is something that reviewers are absolutely welcome to do about anything. So maybe you think there's a conflict of interest. If you're a reviewer, you think you may know the person who wrote the paper, or you have some other sort of relationship with them or their work that may be not above reproach. Or in other words, if a disinterested third party were to look at the arrangement, it might seem that the reviewer might have a hard time being objective because they have a special relationship with the author or their work. If you're a reviewer and you think there may be a problem, it's simple. Just email the associate editor or the editor directly and say, you know, I think we have a conflict of interest here. I probably shouldn't be reviewing this paper. That's perfectly fine. In fact, I just got one of those 2 days ago at the Journal of Small Business and Enterprise Development. We get those all the time, and it's part of the job. So you can do it and communicate directly. Also, there's depending on the reviewer platform that you use, I think pretty much all of them do this, but there's a way to enter comments or even email the associate editor directly by just clicking on their name and sending them comments that you may not wish for the author to see. I know that the associate editors do that a lot when they review the reviews of the reviewers and they look at the paper and evaluate it. There's a portal, there's a channel for them to send comments to me directly that other people are not able to see. And that is very helpful. It's another line of communication where things may need to be more discreet or something. You can do that via email. Even if you want to look up the editor and call them on the telephone. I've had reviewers do that. You know, we're all using technology all the time, right? I mean, look at this amazing video conference we have. I mean, you're in a different country and I'm in Alabama, Chloe's in the UK, you're in Peru, I think most of you, I don't know, you guys may be worldwide. I do not even know where you are, but that's great. But not all of the great reviewers out there are so technologically advanced. Some of them still like to use the telephone, and they'll actually ring you up and call you and talk to you. I have a few colleagues who prefer that way, and that's, again, direct communication with the editor, and it's always useful. So never think as a reviewer that you shouldn't do that if you want to, because you can. The fourth one, the inter-rater reliability, I touched on this already, but I'll re-emphasize it because I think it's really important. Think about what an associate editor does when they look at 3 diverse reviews of a paper. They have to make a complex decision. And there's something about complex decisions that makes it so that if you have complex information to use to make that decision, it's easier. So I actually prefer it when the reviewers don't agree very strongly. We do get papers where the reviewers will unanimously agree on reject or Rarely they'll say accept, but frequently we'll get, 3 reviewers saying reject, and that's fine. They're usually telling you to reject it for different reasons, but they're all saying reject it. But if I get a paper where one person's calling for rejection, one person's calling for a revision, and a third one maybe is very positive about the paper, that gives me a lot of capacity to work with the author, because now I can say, look, we're not ready to publish this yet, but as you can see from reviewer 3, there's a lot of potential here. There's also a lot of work, I believe, that needs to be done on the paper, as you can see from reviewer 2, who gave constructive, critical feedback to you for what to do and what to think about. But there's also a risk of rejecting this paper if you're not able to revise it and satisfy the board, as reviewer 1 indicates they're tending toward rejecting. It just gives me a lot more to say than if I had reviewers that agreed all the way across, because at the end of the day, you have to guide the author and advise the author on how to develop this work, hopefully into a great paper that you can publish in your journal. But if it doesn't make it into your journal, you can know that you've supported them in their efforts to publish elsewhere. So inter-rater reliability is interesting, and it's not something a lot of reviewers think about, which is why I thought it would be important to share with you. Okay, so here we go with the 5th point: address authors directly and explicitly. So you'll see different styles of reviewing. Like, different reviewers will, some are more kind, some are more direct, some write a lot, some don't write very much at all in their review. But here I'm talking about the voice that you use when you write your review. The voice that you use can be what we might call first person or second person. You can actually address the author directly, even though you don't know who they are, which is kind of funny. I can't think of many other situations in human existence where we speak to people in first person when we have no concept of who they are. We can't see them. We don't know their name or anything like that. But you can do that as a reviewer. You can say things like, I don't believe your methods section is descriptive enough of all the specific things that you did. I would like to see you add more information about that. And when an author receives that from a reviewer and they read that kind of language, it comes across more directly and more clear. And I think they take it to heart a little bit more. And as they think about revising the paper, I think it's a better way to communicate, to address the authors directly and explicitly when you write up your review, because they will see what you write. They won't know who you are. You won't know who they are. But I think that's a nice way to communicate as a reviewer, rather than referring to them more obliquely or in the third person or second person. Third person. So please, I would just share that with you. And if any of you are reviewers, I would ask you to engage in that practice if you're not already. The 6th point I think we have here is angle comments toward rejection. So as a reviewer, if you're going to be biased at all, try to bias your review toward rejecting the paper. The simple reality is most journals have maybe an 85 or a 90% rejection rate, at least, if not more. They reject a lot of papers, and the editor simply has to reject a lot of papers because they can't publish all the papers they receive. It's too many. So the reviewers can make that easier by giving some support, if you will, to the editor in this task of finding reasons to reject papers. And then as the editor, if you see a paper that has critical reviews, even clearly advising rejection, the editor can still choose to publish the paper, and that's fine. The editor has that right. But it's easier to take a paper that the reviewers are advising rejection on or being highly critical on and publish it or accept it than it is to take a paper where the reviewers are pretty positive and mostly saying accept, and then you have to reject it. The second scenario is a little bit harder for an editor, So, well, because I mean, you can't accept everything, and you want to be critical and constructive. And if you're just being affirmative and supportive as a reviewer, it doesn't really help the scholarly enterprise as much. And just because you say reject, it doesn't mean that the editor has to reject it. So you can feel comfortable about being highly critical, knowing that the editor, if they're a good editor and good at what they do, they'll see through that and see the whole case and make a decision about the paper that's best for the journal and best for the whole situation. So you can feel free to be highly critical and even tend toward rejection rather than toward acceptance. And then finally, the last point I'll make, and then maybe I'll just briefly talk about how our operational model works, is have a community orientation toward these journals if you're on the team. Communities are powerful. I mean, I think most of you know that a strong community can do things that a weak community can't do. And by strong, I mean, they all share the same values and they subscribe to those values and they believe in those values. And it's how you build culture. It's how you build performance in organizational settings. There's a lot that reviewers can do in this regard. You can invite people to join the editorial board, for example. You can send the editor a note and say, hey, I know a couple of great people who'd be good for the board. That's one way to contribute to the community. Another way to contribute to the community is to look at the website of the journal. If you're just on the board and if you see something that's unclear or an error or something that could be improved, send the editor a note, offer them ideas or constructive feedback for how to improve the overall journal. That's very important, because the website, for instance, is where people around the world who may wish to submit to your journal, it's where they go to learn about the journal, and you want it to look good. And the small editorial team, you know, they can miss some things. They don't catch everything. They don't make all the right decisions. But if you have a whole community oriented around the journal and its success, it's just better for everybody. It's better for the people who submit to the journal. It's better for the publisher. It's better for the reviewers who are part of it, and it helps it succeed. And I think most of you know, if you feel a sense of pride of membership and you're happy and proud to be part of a group, you do better work as a reviewer. You have that intrinsic motivation to do a better job reviewing, which obviously is also very good for the journal. So have a community and a team orientation. I send a fair bit of communication to my editorial team, and I'll usually start out the email with, dear team, hey team, here's what's going on, and thanking them for being involved and reaching out to them for perspective on different things that we need to do. This is very helpful, and a reviewer can play a role in all of that above and beyond the review work that they do. Okay, so I'll just close with a brief description of how our model works at JSB ED. So I have an editorial assistant on my team. I have 2 senior associate editors. We're about to make that 3. We have 6 associate editors, which I think is about to be 7. And then we probably have something about, I haven't counted them recently, 80 or 100 or so on the editorial board. And then we have a publishing team, which Chloe heads up, and they handle the papers that are in production to be published. They handle the behind the scenes Scholar One operations and some of the technological aspects of the platform that we use for reviewing. There's copy editing. They curate the website. They add people to and remove people from the editorial board, and a lot of the operational things that are going on. And then Chloe has strategic responsibilities for positioning the journal in the universe of other journals that are out there where we want to compete and, you know, make an impact and make a contribution. So we have a pretty diverse team in terms of what we do. And the editorial board, of course, are the ones that shepherd or conduct the reviews, and the associate editor team is the ones who shepherd the reviews. But when a paper comes to management decision, this is our way of doing it. Other journals may do it a little bit differently because they're unique and led by different people. But when a paper shows up, it goes directly to the editorial assistant. Every paper we get goes to the editorial assistant, and that individual who happens to work at my university, and we communicate a lot about the journal. She will do a spot check for formatting and quality, not content quality, but like layout and just structure of the document, the actual document. And if a paper does not follow Emerald formatting guidelines or is way too short or way too long, she will actually reject it or send it back to the authors, and they'll have to reformat it and get it ready and then send it back again. And I get a lot of mileage out of this, meaning this helps us a lot, because if a paper passes her checklist, then there's kind of a standardization around the structure and the format of the paper that allows the associate editors and everybody else to review the content more directly. In other words, there's no bias driving the decision based on the structure of the paper, and we're already taking care of some of the formatting options that we're going to have to take care of eventually. So then what she will do is she will assign the papers that come in to one of the 2 senior AEs, which is about to be 3, and they read the paper and they look at the paper. They have the power to reject the paper, to desk reject it if they don't think it will do well with the board, or they don't see a role for it in our journal. Maybe it won't harmonize very well with the mission of the journal. They're free to do that. And they understand our mission and our purpose, and they are well-established scholars. One of them is in Florida, in Tampa, the other one's in Portugal. And then we're about to bring on, I believe we're about to bring on a scholar who's in Rome, Italy, who will join that senior AE team. But they will reject a lot of papers. So the papers that get through them are actually typically in pretty good shape. And then the senior AEs will select one of the 6 or soon to be 7 associate editors based on their expertise. And each one of the AEs has a different expertise. We are an entrepreneurship journal, so we have people who are into technology entrepreneurship, social enterprise, strategic thinking, ecosystems, history, education. They're all there, and the senior AE will look at the paper and read the paper, and if they think it should be reviewed, they will select an AE based on a match with the experience. Then it goes to the AEs. The AEs then go to the editorial board, of which we, as I said earlier, I think we're around 80 or 90 or something like that, but we're trying to grow. So if any of you out there would like to join our board, please send me an email and we will work on that. The AEs will select at least 2 reviewers. Sometimes they select more. We had one that came back the other day and it had 5 reviews. I don't know why he got 5 reviewers, but he did. Sometimes if there is like a really exceptional case, we might only get 1, because the paper is marginal anyway. And if that happens, we can do it. But in those cases, I need the associate editor to step in and give a much more rich review with strong arguments for why we can get away with 1 reviewer. And then if I think we still need another reviewer, I can go to the board and add 1 more. But we get a lot of different cases. Every paper is different. But when the reviewers receive a paper or an invitation to review from an AE, they do the kinds of things that we talked about here on this slide. Critical, descriptive, and all of that stuff happens. And then they submit their review. The system will give them reminders. There's a deadline. If it's running late because of you're too busy as a reviewer or you're traveling, we can extend the deadline. That requires some direct communication with the editor typically. Not a problem. We do that a fair bit. People are busy and people have lives, so we do that for them. And then the paper comes back, and the reviews and the associate editor comments come to me. At the Journal of Small Business and Enterprise Development, we also have a practitioner board that I've assembled, and these are not scholars. These are entrepreneurs. They own businesses and they run businesses all over the world. Every now and then we'll get a paper that has like practical implications that my editorial board isn't quite, they're not working in the area per se. So we can benefit from an entrepreneur in that sector offering some feedback or something like that. So we don't do that for every paper, but for, every now and then we will do that, and I will make the decision to do that, and I will handle that. And then a decision comes from me. I have to sign off on all the decisions, and they go back to the authors. Sometimes papers are rejected and people are upset. The authors are angry. That's part of the job. You have to, maintain the reputation of the journal and be kind to people. And, it's happened to me. It's happened to all of us. We've been rejected many times. It's when you got 90% and higher rejection rates, it's invariably going to happen to you. So you can kind of coach the authors a little bit and help them when they get their paper accepted. They're always very happy, and you get a lot of nice notes from that. Unfortunately, we reject a lot more papers than we accept, so we have more upset people and unhappy people than we have happy people, but it's okay. The unhappy people, they get over it, and they understand it's part of the game. But you can help them as a good editor. You can say, look, you're clearly a great scholar, but we just have to reject a lot of papers here. So I'll stop there. I hope that was rich and interesting for you, and anything we can do for you or I can do for you, I would welcome you contacting me. So thank you for your attention.